Well, we have Florida weather this week, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Up here.
I
I'm
haven't
happy to
seen
hear
it
that.
yet, no, Tony. I haven't seen it. Is it coming?
Well, you know what they say about New England weather. If you don't like it, hang around for about 15 minutes. It'll change.
It changes that frequently.
It sure does. Eric, I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I think I'm fully recovered at this point, which is great.
Well, that's great to hear. God bless you.
Thank you.
Is the secretary coming in person or is she Zooming? Do you know?
I don't. Bree may have that information.
Senator Moore, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear it. I'm so sorry.
Will the secretary, good morning, Bree.
Good morning.
Will the secretary be in person or is it via Zoom?
She'll be in person. There'll be, she's actually right here in hearing room 2E right now.
Okay.
Hey, Bree.
Hi, Ron. How are you? Hi, Representative.
Hi, good morning. Can you just
Good-
let us know when the secretary is ready to go
Well,
and when we are going to be live?
I'll check in with the good secretary. You ready to go now? Okay. Give me 2 seconds, Representative Chairman, so that I can start the recording.
No rush. Okay, good morning. I would call the bonding subcommittee meeting to order Monday, April 10th. Some of us here are meeting virtually. Some are in our meeting room 2E. The Secretary of State has come before us this morning to make a presentation. Secretary, welcome. We apologize we can't be with you, but thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And good morning, co-chairs Moore, Napoli, ranking members Wong and Piscopo, and members of the subcommittee. I thank you for the opportunity to testify here today on 3 critical projects. The first is relates to our ballot tabulators. You're all familiar with the ballot tabulator. It's the machines that we use to administer our elections. Many of you know they're almost 20 years old. They have well exceeded their useful life. You've probably seen headlines over the years, the past 5 years or so, because they've become unreliable and unserviceable. It's old technology. There's frequent jamming, if there's any moisture outside or rain. You probably all remember the headlines last August when parts of the machine were melting because of the high heat. The company who produced these machines has gone out of business, so it's impossible for us to source any new replacement parts. So in other words, this is no way for us to run our elections, which are the foundation of our democracy. So we are requesting 25 million in bonding to purchase 3,000 new machines that are required statewide. And we've broken down that number in our written testimony, but just briefly, our 169 towns operate 750 polling places, and we're not aware of any polling place that uses just one tabulator. Most use several. Larger municipalities require even more due to the volume of voters. And then each town, in addition to the polling locations by statute, are required to operate a separate election day registration location. And there are also separate locations for absentee ballots. And under statute, each tabulator must have a backup in case of machine failure. Our submitted materials also break down the other associated costs, including secure ballot boxes, ink cartridges, memory sticks for the machines, the software licensing, as well as delivery and installation. We're also proposing the purchase of 10 high-speed tabulator machines and 30 medium-speed tabulators to deploy in the larger towns to assist with the end-of-night counting of large sums of absentee ballots on election day. Just by way of data, in 2020, Stamford, for example, processed 30,000 absentee ballots. And last year, where we saw a decrease in absentee ballot usage, they still process 5,000. So the high-speed machines will really help with that. The second project has to do with automatic voter registration. Public Act 21-2 called for the expansion of AVR at 6 additional state agencies outside of the DMV. We're requesting 1.7 million to implement AVR in each of these agencies. And we also have to manage that integration with our new centralized voter registration system, CVRS, which is in the process of being programmed and will roll out next year. And just again, by way of data, when we undertook the first AVR project at the DMV, the cost was 1.9 million. So I just wanted to provide that so you have a sense that for 1.7, we'll be able to do the new integration with CVRS and also roll it out at 6 additional agencies. A bargain. And the last project has to do with a few things in our business services division. 2.4 million is what we're requesting to complete the migration from the Concord system. As you may recall, we migrated everything from Concord to our business one-stop platform, which has been operating with great success since June 2021. So we're now moving into phase 2 of that project. One of the things we need to do is create a centralized trade name registry. Right now, you may be aware, every town keeps that registry separately, and there's no central place for someone to go and look up to see if a trade name is in operation. So this will create an overall system for people to do that. We also have improvements to our identity verification and security measures on the platform to help mitigate fraud. We have seen since going to the one-stop shop, without some of these security measures, that there has been an increase in fraudulent activities because there are just no security features built in. So we'd like to do that. And then other planned improvements include creating a new streamlined portal for our FinSys filing fee tracking service, also for processing our apostilles and document authentications when people request use of the state seal, and also when we have to process extradition requests from other states. So all of these details about these costs are in the materials we have provided you. Happy to answer questions with my A and B team. And thank you for the time.
Great, Secretary. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was very informative and helpful. So the committee does thank you for that. I'll start off with a couple of questions and then we'll go to our members if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks. So Secretary, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that the current tabulators that we have statewide are about 20 years old. Is that the average lifespan?
Yeah, the companies usually say 15 to 20 years. I'm sorry, 10 to 15 years. I'm being told 10 to 15 years. So we are well beyond that window of useful life. Okay, great. And then Secretary, the legislature has for the past couple of years had different legislation around what's called ranked choice voting. In the future, if that were to come out or pass, would the tabulators, as a hypothetical, if we were to agree to this $25 million purchase of tabulators, would that cover ranked choice voting, or would we have to go out and repurchase tabulators statewide if that were to happen? No, the new tabulators, all the new models on the market can do all of the more sophisticated tasks that I think the election space is moving in, whether it's ranked choice voting or risk limiting audits, or even faster election night results. The new machines can do all of that.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So I'm going to call on our co-chair, Senator Moore, and then we'll go to our legislators who are actually in room 2E. Senator Moore, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Madam Secretary. How are you?
Good morning. Nice to see you.
You also there. So I have a couple of questions. How frequent does the technology change on these machines? Do you know?
I don't know if anyone has a specific, but I would say not that frequently. As you may be aware, all of any technology being used in elections have to undergo certification, I guess, for lack of a better term, by the federal government for use in the United States. This is not a quick process typically. So I wouldn't expect any great reforms that would make these machines obsolete.
Okay, and so I love what you did in the way of a budget, looking at the high, low, and figuring out what's the medium cost, and I think that was a great idea and helps us understand that you're the most that you would really need and a number to work in between. So the tabulators, would every office, every town get them, whether they require them or not? Would we all be using the same operating platform, that we're all getting new tabulators and not just some?
Exactly. So every town would have the same tabulator. I have heard people talk about perhaps every town doesn't need one, but I'd like to underscore that the company that made these machines no longer exists, and therefore the parts no longer exist. We have been, as a state, trying to buy old machines from other places. We've even gone so far as to be on eBay trying to bid on old machines. They just don't exist anymore, and the parts don't exist anymore. So there really is no useful life to keep any of these machines in use, because a backup is only a backup if it's reliable.
And is there a contract for maintenance that comes along with the purchase of these?
Yes. Correct.
All right. And my final question will be, if we were to bond this and it was the money was appropriated, how long would it take? What would be the process if the dollars were approved?
We do have to go through an RFP process. We are writing that RFP now, and it should be done shortly. So we have to go out to bid, vet those machines. And I don't know if we have an exact timeline because we're so early in the process. I'm looking at Gabe Rosenberg is here, my chief of staff.
We don't have a timeline, but Hi, this is Gabe Rosenberg. We don't have a precise timeline, but our goal is to have them ready for the 2024 general election.
Excuse me, not the primary?
I would love for that to be the case, but I want to set expectations correctly. It is a long process, so hopefully, but for sure by the general election.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rosenberg, I've never met you, but I hear your name an awful lot down here in Bridgeport. Nice to meet
Hopefully
you,
good
though.
things.
It's always been good, but it's nice to meet you virtually. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moore. I know. Do you need a virtual hand?
Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that.
Ranking's hands up, Senator.
Thank you. Representative Piscopo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Madam Secretary, it's good to see you here. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it and
Yeah.
appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
The tabulator is pretty big figure and
Yeah.
so I got to try and get to the bottom of this. Is the actual tabulator that machine we fill out our ballot and we put it in? That's
Yes.
the tabulator.
Yes.
And you have bid for all our voting districts, like some towns have 3
Exactly.
voting. Okay, so you have all that covered.
Yes.
I'm sure you've anticipated all the early voting. You've been over there at GAE a lot this year, and I'm sure you anticipated the early voting debate that's in progress in this
Yes.
body. Is this in relation to or to get ready for the early voting, or is there any bond requests you have pending, if I will, or in the near future that you were?
No, nothing related to early voting. The method of early voting that exists in all 3 of the bills that passed out of committee call for a manual method of voting. So people will fill out their ballot, put it in a sealed envelope, much like you might with election day registration or absentee voting. So the tabulator won't be in use at all, other than for counting.
Oh, okay, just for counting. Is there a way to cross-check signatures, absentee ballots? Is that all in the software, if you will, and of the tabulator?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. I have a lot to learn on this.
Okay.
issue. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Representative. Ranking from the Senate, Senator Wong, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Madam Secretary. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, Senator.
Enjoyed working with you as a state rep. I think we're very lucky as a state, so congratulations again. I'll
Thank
dive right in by saying that as a former ranking member in GAE, I remember years past, probably 3-4 years ago, this body gave a significant sum of money to then Secretary of State Merrill for a study in conjunction with UConn in regards to tabulators and technology. Were there any results from that money spent and that study that facilitated helping you in your review of the tabulator acquisition?
No, although I'll turn it over to Gabe Rosenberg in a moment. And Senator, I like your new glasses.
you.
The need for tabulators, all of my evidence is coming from the field. Like I said in my opening statements, you know, if you've even read the newspaper in the last 5 years, you hear stories. I remember my own election in 2018. My first election, I didn't get my results from one of the polling places. It was raining that year. And, you know, if a ballot gets a little wet or something in these old machines, they jam. So they had to do a manual count, which took well into the next day. So if you spend any time speaking with registrars of voters, town clerks, etc., who use these machines every year, and if you talk with the company that does the servicing, and probably anyone in the secretary's office who's been there longer than I have, you're well aware how these machines are failing at a regular clip in different ways, just because of their how long they've been in use. And Gabe, I don't know if you'd like to add anything specifically about, I don't recall what study that is. I'd have to look it up.
It was a smaller part of a larger bonding package that included other things, and I can find that and send you the breakdown. But generally speaking, we work with UConn Voter Center regularly to evaluate everything with respect to voting technology, including tabulators, and we're kind of waiting for the RFP for them to get in under the hood of the 5 major companies and their offerings in this area.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and I would indeed very much like to get that report for the committee to review. You can see my concern in understanding that we committed millions of dollars, being aware of the challenges the current secretary mentioned in regards to tabulators and the outdated technology. And we had hoped to spend valuable tax dollars to understand the challenges and guidance. So if there is indeed a report, I would very much like to see it and have it reflected in the acquisition strategy. I'll move on. My second question is in regards to you're requesting 1.7 million to implement an automatic voter registration. I think we have one. I know we have one right now that was put into an MOU between the Secretary of State's office with the Department of Motor Vehicle. I'm really glad that you're going through the legislative process for review on this. But I'm noticing that you got the Department of Social Services, Connect CT, UConn, Connecticut State University's, the Department of Labor, Department of Emergency Services and Protection. That is a broad area of coverage of automatic voter registration. Was there any consideration to include military branches and veteran services in the AVR?
And I'll turn it over to Gabe as well. I was vice chair of GAE in the 2021 session when several AVR bills were introduced, and they were wide ranging and covered many different agencies. The bill that ultimately passed and became Public Act 21-2 only specified these specific 6 agencies, and they sort of left open a line saying that the Secretary of the State's office could review on a regular basis to see if other entities should be added. Am I recalling correctly?
Yeah, pretty much. It specifically required us, the state of Connecticut, to expand automatic voter registration to the voter registration agencies under the NVRA. And several of those are listed here. And another part of 21-2 asked the Office of the Secretary to evaluate some specific agencies, and it included Veterans Affairs, as well as any other agency where it could be possible. But the agency itself has to have a database of signatures in order to make the AVR process work. And we were required to report back to GAE with a report of how that investigation went. And I can forward that to the committee as well. I think it was required to be done by the beginning of 23, but it actually was done by the beginning of 22. And veterans was included in that, as was DESP. And you can see DESP on the list because they had a database that was usable for this. I don't off the top of my head remember what the result was from veterans, but it is in that report, and I'll dig it up and send it.
Yeah, I would like to ask if through the Secretary of State's office to consider veteran affairs and also as part of the purview of the Secretary of the State, new business registrations. Would that be a consideration for automatic registration for new business owners or new business registrations?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's two real main considerations here. One is that they have a database that contains signatures already for us to tap into, just like the DMV. And then the other one is, do they routinely register people from out of state or who aren't US citizens? And the business registrations that, because they register any company that does business in Connecticut, many of them are not Connecticut businesses. They're just businesses that have an operation here of some kind. So it might not be a fertile area for automatic voter registration, just because the vast majority of businesses that are coming through here include people who aren't from Connecticut or even are US citizens.
Well, thank you. And I eagerly look forward to more of the background on the AVR. We want to get everybody that is eligible to vote to participate in the voting process, but obviously there needs to be responses and vetting process. My third question, at the indulgence of the chair, is we have allocations in regards to the tabulators and business services within the department. Is there any financial request to facilitate training of our voters, registrars or voters and municipalities in the utilization of these new technology and new program and services? It is going to be a critical element because the individuals down on Main Street are going to be executing and managing the process. Is there any consideration for additional bonding requests to facilitate training and interaction and support of our local registrars of voters?
Not at this time. It's included in the figures you have in front of you today. The training on the new tabulators. CVRS is a system that the registrars are currently using. We'll be rolling out a new version of it next year, and that training is already absorbed in other work we're doing. So they won't have to learn anything new for these additional agencies.
I would just caution in some regards, one of the biggest challenges in the implementation of early voting and the new tabulators is you're going to require a lot of work, a lot of adaptation, a lot of transition for our municipal offices. And some would deem that as a unfunded mandate from the states to our municipalities. So if there's any delineation and strong consideration to allocate funds for training and support and specific earmark to that area, I think it'd be greatly appreciated by local municipalities and registrars of voters. So I'll look forward to seeing more of that as we move this process along. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And I absolutely agree. Full funding needed for early voting, or don't pass it.
Thank you for your question, Senator Moore, or Senator Juan. I'll now call on, I believe, Representative Yacarino in the room had a question or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Wong asked one of my questions about training, and obviously we want our registers and clerks to be trained. And it's good to see you, Gabe, again, and good to see all of you. But by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. For all the items for procurement, or was there any bidding? Is there going to be a bidding process? You have the numbers, but some of these items you could actually, for the cartridges and other high-speed items, you could maybe partner up with DAS or other agencies for procurement. So do you look at any of that? Not the tabulators, I know, but some of the other items.
You mean the CVRS items?
Yeah, anything we could anything for, is there a bidding process?
There will be
Blinded by this, yeah.
Yeah, there'll be a bidding process, definitely for the tabulators. I suppose there will also be a bidding process actually for the vendor that will help us implement the AVR system. So, yeah, and we always partner with DAS when possible. Yeah.
That's important. So, and some of these, obviously other states are using the same type of machinery we're gonna hopefully buy and implement. And that's worked out well for them. And back to the training, I mean, obviously this is gonna happen. We want it to roll out nice and smooth and where people are
Yes.
comfortable voting and that's fine.
Not more than I do.
Yeah, I get it. And I do believe you, but we all want that. though.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
do.
absolutely.
I really think that's it. Just, we need training. Obviously, those three bills, one of those passes, we need full funding for municipalities. That's not
Yes.
for today's discussion, but we all know we need, that's gonna be a bit pushback for towns for a mandate.
Yeah.
So, and I think you'll get more
100%.
people on board with, we could either somehow fund each municipality going forward.
Absolutely. We will have to. Most towns have already set their budgets or they're in
Right.
the final throes of doing so between training not only of the registrars, but also recruitment and training of poll workers and also training the public how to use early voting. Those costs are, as I believe, I think OFA just put out some projections for the bills that passed out of committee. So we'll see how it rolls out on the floor.
Like you said, it's similar, really similar. It's gonna be similar, I think, to absentee balloting currently. And I noticed there's quite a few boxes for towns. Don't most towns have the drop boxes now?
Towns have drop boxes. Oh, do you mean?
On the,
The ballot boxes.
Yeah.
Sorry, no. Ballot box is different than the drop boxes.
okay,
The ballot box, you probably never have seen or noticed, when you feed your ballot into the machine, the ballot box is where they're stored securely.
okay.
Is
I think
that a good way of explaining it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like the electronic part of the tabulator is just the top. And then everything underneath it are the ballot box that it feeds into depending on what happens with the
That
ballot.
makes sense. Does it scan?
Yeah, it's an optical scanner that on the top that it rolls the ballot in, scans it, and then puts it into
just
the
like-
ballot box
Like
underneath.
you went in, it's like you went in a gym to vote. It's similar, it's a sense.
Exactly. And
Oh, so that's pretty.
yeah,
good.
and that box is what is secure and
Yeah, that's good.
tamper proof.
All right, well, thank you all, and thank
Mhm.
you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Representative Ferraro, you have the floor.
Thank you to the chair. Hi, Madam Secretary. Thanks for being here. And I just had a couple follow-up questions based on what my colleagues had asked. One was you mentioned in your memo that you had sent along, and then in your testimony, a little bit about the medium speed and high speed tabulators. Could you describe those a little bit more in depth and where you think those would be deployed, and if certain municipalities would request those, or how that would work according to the strategy you all would put forward?
Sure. Thank you, Representative. Good morning. So there's the high-speed machines solve a few issues. First and foremost, obviously counting. Like I said, a town like Stamford last year had 5,000 absentee ballots. So the ability, think like a high-speed copy machine, the ability to stack a large number of ballots that scan through and count quickly is what these new machines do. But they also are easier to, or they can more easily manage folded paper. So, people return their absentee ballots, they're folded. your town clerk is unfolding it, and when in our current machines, when you try to feed them in, they jam. So if a paper is creased, folded, these high speed and medium speed machines have an easier time handling that type of non-pristine ballot, if you will. And I'm sure I'm going to look at my two colleagues to see if they want to add anything further about the high speed or medium speed.
The only thing I'd add is that the regular, quote unquote, regular tabulators are very similar to the ones we have now, where you put one ballot in at a time.
Yeah.
In any town that has a large number of absentee ballots or early voting ballots being centrally counted, this would dramatically speed up the amount of time it takes to count them, because they go in one after the other on their own.
Thank you for that further description. It's very helpful for those of us that don't count ballots on a regular basis. So thanks for providing that. And I would just kind of with a follow-up, given the numbers of the medium and high speed that you're requesting, certain locales that have a kind of a higher number of ballots, those are the ones that would be able to request these machines, or those are the ones that these would be deployed to. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Great.
There are certain towns we know just from their absentee ballot rates over the past several years will always likely have a high number. And I think our office would sit down and think about where to deploy those medium machines. And it could be that that might change over time. It's fair.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And just one final question about the automatic voter registration implementation. I know you all had noted the passage of that bill that many of us had voted on a couple of years ago, and the agencies that were indicated. If we move forward with the bonding request, do you all have a timeline unto which these agencies would come on board? Is it more of a rolling process based on their databases, or is there kind of a set time they would all kind of be unified in having this implemented?
You're exactly right in that it's more of a rolling basis, because we do not have the ability to control their workflow, only our own. So we would, as we have already, begin working with them, looking to see where their systems are already unified with ours, and what changes need to happen. So my goal is to roll these out as quickly as possible. So I'm hopeful that we can get it all done in short order.
Thank you, Secretary, for that answer. And again, as you said, we want to get this law implemented. We want more folks to be registered to vote, and it's good to hear that some of the agencies, again, have provided insight into how this could happen, so that once we might provide the bonding dollars, it could come to fruition. So thanks so much for answering those questions, and I really appreciate the time to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I recognize our co-chair, Senator Moore. Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you for a second time. Appreciate it. I was thinking about the security of the machines when it was mentioned that they're insecure. Have you actually been to a location or watched these being used, the ones that you're considering?
We have not issued an RFP yet. I have met with a couple of the companies just to get a sense of what the newer machines look like. So I have seen those in operation. As Gabe indicated earlier, there are only a handful of companies in the United States authorized to sell these machines. So once we have the RFP, we'll issue that, and we'll be doing a much deeper dive depending on who submits. And you know, we've even talked about having the machines come here to Hartford so that legislators could take a look, and we could also invite registrars and town clerks before we make any final decision.
The reason I ask is I've seen so many things in the way of technology change over to new systems and fiascos to follow. I know how to cut billing systems myself, even with all the work that we do. So I would hope that, and this is like a warning, forewarning about what can go wrong, that they're tested well in advance of an election before they're finalized. I really would want to hear that commitment that they're tested, retested, and tested again. So we don't have a fiasco in November that there's something wrong with all the machines that we purchased. And then the other was, I want to feel comfortable that all 169 towns would have them. If we're going to have them, everybody has them at the same time and not some have them and not others. Is that the plan, that everybody would have them, even if it's, no, that everyone would have them when we're able to use them?
Yeah, absolutely. Every town would need the new machines. I think it's unworkable to do anything where you are creating a two-tier system where some towns have the new machines, some towns have old ones. One, you have the training requirement, and I think it is dangerous to have many registrars trained on one machine and not on the other, especially we're entering this era where registrars are retiring and there's a lot of new people coming in. So you sort of risk this two-pronged system where a new registrar comes in, only knows the old machine, doesn't know the new machine, etc. Not to mention, for all the reasons I mentioned already, the current machines are literally on their last legs. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where, 5 years from now, you're still forced to use those machines in certain towns. In terms of making sure everyone is trained, obviously that is top of mind for me. Part of the reason I ran for this job in the first place, just to make sure that, we are paying ample attention to process in addition to the policy. So we have a working group that will be put together as we go through the procurement process that will include people on the technology committee of the Registrar of Voters Association of Connecticut. So they know these machines inside and out, and they know how they need to use it. So we are involving them from the earliest stage all the way through to make sure that whatever we purchase and the implementation is as smooth as possible.
Thank you. And I love the idea of bringing them to the Capitol for people to, both for the legislators, but for people also to have an opportunity to see what we're using statewide and how we're spending their dollars. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those good questions, Senator. I believe Representative Veach in the room has a question. Representative, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. Thank you all for coming in person. Always nice to see you. Most of my questions have been answered already, but I did have one quick question for you. The RFP that's going out, so I know there's a whole bidding process, and you had mentioned there were 5 companies that, I guess internationally, or is it just within the states that make these machines? Would we be lucky enough to have somebody here in Connecticut make these machines? I mean, this is a huge I'd like to see some of this money come back to our state.
I don't think any Connecticut companies are certified.
Unfortunately, that's too bad. Well, I think that, I also would like to add that, like many of us who have mentioned previously, it's important as this process gets rolled out to really think about the people that are implementing this, and not put such a strain on the local municipalities to make this work, and not to have the many glitches that are very possible. Training in particular. I know that my town clerk has threatened to to leave and retire. And as you know, some of the other people that are involved in this and getting people to work, the polls themselves is also
Yes.
a big problem, and now with new innovative things that we're going to be using, the training is crucial. So I hope that you will consider that as we move through this process. Other than that, everything else has been answered, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, 100%. I have a call with town clerks in about 15 minutes. We convene starting this month, monthly, to again make sure everyone is fully in the loop, has a chance to express any concerns, get answers to their questions, etc. I think our entire office is very invested in making sure that anything that we roll out is done with excellence.
Okay, fantastic. They're the ones with the boots on the ground.
Yeah,
So really, they're the ones. that we should be
exactly.
working. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your answers. Okay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your questions, Representative. The chair would recognize the good deputy speaker, Representative Palio. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Madam Secretary. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for your thoughtful submission of testimony today and your testimony here. A follow-up question, as you mentioned Stanford a couple of times and reading through your testimony over the weekend around municipalities as we see higher absentee ballot returns and the work that goes along with that. Obviously up front and then during election day and after election day. With your proposal, does that include for places like Stanford, some of our other cities that are having higher returns with absentee ballots to have increased tabulators to be able to get to those ballots sooner, to be able to count them, to do all of the work that needs to be done so that the returns are there and that those reports then are made so that we can have that information sooner to the public?
We are proposing those towns get the high-speed machines so that, it's statutory when absentee ballots can be opened. So the high-speed machines will help them to process the ABs more quickly.
Because we've seen, obviously, with technology down or with some of the unreliability and some of the failure rates with tabulators, that it takes a longer amount of time to be able to report results from municipalities, certainly. And that certainly, in some cases, can add days to getting those final results back in. So you certainly see certainly more reliability and maybe taking some of the pressure off. We've talked about looking at the cities and the registrars and being able to work with them, but this may kind of lighten the load in some respects also by providing them with this updated technology and being able to process those absentee ballots, get them counted, and then get those results made public.
You're absolutely correct. One thing I hear from a lot of the frontline election workers, obviously it's a long day on election day. So to have to feed these ballots one at a time when you've been up since 4 a.m., at the poll since 5 a.m., it really does create a bit of a hardship. So these high-speed machines, people have implored me, like, please get a machine that can read a folded piece of paper more easily without jamming. So getting these high-speed machines deployed in places will be a real help to all of the frontline election workers on election day.
Thank you for that. Out of curiosity, just looking at your testimony and reading through, how many municipalities over the last several years have had failures with technology, with the tabulators? Or do you even keep data along those lines? But I'd be interested in how many municipalities have reported failures, closing down, possibly, or having suspension in voting at a particular polling place because of this technology failing. Do we have numbers there? Do we have statistics there on overall failure rates?
We don't have hard data because what typically happens, the town goes to one of their backups. So they may not even think to report it because they were able to keep the election going, even though a machine failed. We might have data on, no, because usually a town has been able to use their backups or they get a part replaced. It's just getting tougher and tougher. We do know last summer there were, I think, 4 machines, 3 or 4 that had the heat issue where the parts were melting, the roller. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure how
Yeah.
many there were. And because the towns and what they're supposed to do is go roll over to their backup tabulator, it's not something that they would necessarily report to us, except to let us know that, you know, like last summer, that there was a systemic issue with the rollers in the heat.
Okay, thank you. And then just one follow-up question as it relates to the business filings and changing of the platforms. What type of assistance is there as businesses are transferring or have transferred to the new platform around customer service, around getting them acclimated with some of the new features, with some of the new portals, with some of the new reporting that they have to do compared to what they were doing in the past?
And I'm so sorry, my director of business services is on vacation this week and couldn't be here. I do know that our staff processes an extraordinary number of open tickets, whether people email or call. I believe last week we had about 1,200 tickets, and we answer those within a day or two. So we do a lot of hand-holding one-on-one with business owners. I'll turn to Gabe in case he has more in-depth info.
Not more in depth, but the changes on the business owner side are not substantial. The substantial changes are on the public's ability to look up these filings. So the businesses themselves didn't really have a very steep learning curve in using the new system. But anyone who's used the old system to look up a business filing and then has come to use the new system sees immediately how much easier it is to use.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate the answers today, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for being here and for your thoughtful presentation and your thoughtful answers.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative. Now we would recognize Representative Baumgartner. You have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am playing double duties with my phone and my computer. I think I'm going to have an automatic software update momentarily. So I'm going to hop on my phone, if you will.
No problem.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair, and apologize for the technical difficulties, Madam Chair. I know you have to, Madam Secretary, I should say. I know you have to run in a few minutes, so I'll keep my questions brief. My only question stems from kind of what we already have in terms of our equipment and voting machines. I understand there is quite a demand for those specific machines for parts. And I was wondering, as we move to the new machines, if we intend to offer other states that maybe have similar voting machines or machines that maybe have a little bit more of a useful life to utilize some of the machines that are on their way out for various parts.
I'm sad to report that we are the only state using these machines. So,
Well, yes, that answers my question.
Yeah, I think they have life at the scrapyard next.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary, and it's great to see you and your wonderful team.
Good to see you. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you for the questions, Representative. Are there any members in the room or on the Zoom with us who have any further questions for the secretary before she has to leave?
Representative
Yes, Chair.
Veach.
I'm sorry.
Representative Veach for the second time.
Can you hear me? Just wanted a quick follow-up. These backup tablets, tabulators, the number that you've given us, so everyone will get the new machines for backup, right?
Yeah,
Okay, I just
exactly.
wanted to make sure that was part of this number
Yes,
of tabulators we were looking at.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your answers and
Thank
have
you.
a nice day. Thank you.
Okay, great. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for being here. I hope we made your deadline so you can attend your next meetings. And on behalf of the entire subcommittee, I want to thank you. You know, as a new Secretary of State, you have really hit the ground running, and we are thankful that you brought this to our attention, and there'll certainly be some follow-up very soon. So thanks so much for being here, and feel free to follow up with the committee at your convenience.
Perfect. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I'm willing to stay here as long as I need to, but feel free to be in touch if any new questions come up, and we'll get you the information we promised. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Have a great day.